Hi guys, it's Mr. Vree. I'd like you to get your notes out and I'd like you to watch some animations to recap what we learned yesterday, which are the 3 steps of aerobic respiration. At the end of the video, I'm going to put this slide up, and you need to be able to label which part of respiration, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, or electron transport chain each of these chemicals in the formula for respiration are either used in the reactant side or produced in the product side. Also, I want you to focus on how or how much and where the ATP is generated. So what I'd like you to do now is get a whiteboard out with your neighbor and pause the video and answer these 3 questions. Okay, you ready for the answers? Here they come. So glycolysis takes place in the cytosol. The reactant is glucose, and produced are 2 pyruvates, 2 ATP, and 2 NADH. Okay, on to the next step, which is the Krebs cycle. You can see we're actually all of our stuff starts as food, and then which becomes glucose into our cells. We go through glycolysis, and here are those 2 pyruvates that we're going to make, and they're going to move into the mitochondria to do the Krebs cycle. So it's going to zoom in. So now we're going from pyruvate into the mitochondria. And when we do that, we're going to make a NADH. And how that happens is we're going to turn our 3 carbon into a 2 carbon. And that means that extra carbon is going to become carbon dioxide. Now that 2 carbon acetyl-CoA is going to combine with another 4 carbon molecule to make a 6 carbon molecule. That 6 carbon molecule is going to become a 5 carbon molecule, which means we're going to lose a carbon, and that carbon once again is going to turn into carbon dioxide. And we're also going to make an NADH when we do that. That process is going to happen again. 5 carbon is going to become a 4 carbon. We're going to lose a CO2, but once again we're going to harness that energy and turn it into a NAD and ATP. And that process is going to be very similar here. We're not going to lose any carbon, but we're going to go through some chemical reactions, and that 4 carbon molecule is going to turn into a different one, and we're going to make a NAD, and we're going to make an FADH2 FAD, and both of those are electron carriers. So in summary, a couple things. One thing is, remember we had 2 pyruvates, so this cycle is going to happen 2 times. So take all these numbers and times them by 2. Let's count them up. Let's start with our carbon dioxides. So we have 1, 2, 3. So 3 carbon dioxides times 2 makes 6. Let's count our NADs now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times 2 is 8, so we're going to make 8 NADH. And 1 FAD times 2 makes 2. Okay, so like you get your whiteboards out again and answer these 3 questions. Pause the video now. Okay, I'm going to show the answers here. So Krebs cycle takes place in the mitochondria. The reactants are those 2 pyruvates. That's what we started with. And what is produced are 2 ATP, which we forgot to count at the end, but there was 1 made each cycle. So 2, 8 NADH, 2 FADH, and 6 CO2. So we're on the final step, which is the electron transport chain. And this is where we're going to use all the energy in those electrons and those hydrogens and NAD and FAD to make a whole bunch of ATP. Here we go. So the electron transport chain takes inside of a membrane. Let me pause that real quick and rewind. So this inner membrane, so inside the mitochondria there's another membrane, and it's going to take place right there. So in there are going to come our NAD and our FAD, and they're going to approach that membrane. And all these little things inside of it are proteins that are going to carry electrons from one to the other. So here it goes. NAD is going to break down. It's going to release its electrons, and those electrons, we're going to use their energy to pump hydrogen ions out of here, because that's going to take energy. to do that. And those electrons are going to move from one protein to the next. And we're going to use their energy. See how as they went by, those hydrogen ions went out. Now FAD does the same thing. Its hydrogen ions and its electrons move down the chain. And there we go. Those electrons their energy pumps hydrogen ions out on the outside. And so in the end, we're going to end up with a whole bunch of hydrogen ions out here. Okay, I need to rewind that right there. Okay, and those electrons are going to be really attracted to oxygen. And so oxygen is actually what's going to be pulling those electrons through here. And those electrons are going to react with oxygen and these 4 hydrogen ions to make 2 waters, H2O times 2. So you can do the math there. 4 hydrogens, 2 oxygens makes 2 H2Os. And so that's where our oxygen is a reactant and our water is a product. Now, how are we going to make ATP? Well, remember, we had all those hydrogen ions out here. It's going to do this real fast for us. So here, look at all those hydrogen ions, tons and tons of them. What's going to happen is, remember, they're going to move from a high concentration to a low concentration. This is like water moving down a water wheel. We're going to use all that energy. Instead of making electricity like you might make at a dam where water flows downhill to make electricity, we're going to use hydrogen ions flowing down the gradient to make ADP turn into ATP. Here we go. So there it is. Okay, so look at that. See, ADP turns into ATP. That protein is called ATP synthase, and it's going to turn ADP into ATP because of all those hydrogen ions. We're going to make about 30, 32, depending on the source you check, ATPs. So I'd like you to get your whiteboards out and answer these 3 questions. Pause the video now. Okay, here are the answers. So where does this take place? In the inner mitochondrial membrane. Mitochondria is fine. The reactants are oxygen, the 8 NADs we had, really 10 NADs, and the 2 FADs. And what is produced is water, and then our NADs are going to turn into NAD+, our FADs are going to turn into FAD+, but most importantly, we're going to make a whole bunch of ATP, about 30 of them. Okay, so what I'd really like you to do now is write out the formula for respiration on your whiteboard. You can see it here. And I'd like you to label which step of respiration are we going to use glucose and oxygen, and where are we going to produce carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. Pause the video now. Okay, here are the answers. So glucose is going to be used in glycolysis. The oxygen, remember, is going to happen in that last step, and it's going to accept those electrons in the electron transport chain. Carbon dioxide is going to be made in the Krebs cycle. Water is going to be made when it reacts with oxygen in the electron transport chain. And all of the steps make ATP. Most of it is made in the electron transport chain, but they all are going to make some ATP. I hope this video was helpful. You need to answer some questions in your textbook. Mr. Naveau will help you with that as needed, as he does have access to my answer key if you need it. But you should be all set if you have good notes and you have your textbook. Good luck. Have a great day.